and welcome to Transfer Talk. Manchester United and Borussia Dortmund are edging closer to agreeing a deal that would see Jadon Sancho leave on loan. We're with the Dortmund team in Marbella this hour. Mikel Arteta may look to the market this month. We'll look at potential areas that they may add to. Eddie Howe updates us on Newcastle's plans. Could we see Calvin Phillips join them? And Thomas Frank makes it very clear that Ivan Toney is going nowhere this month. A very good afternoon to Flex, Dan Bardell and Dave Reed, and to all of you watching on the Sky Sports News YouTube channel. And we are going to kick off with Arsenal today. Waiting to speak to us is our reporter, Gary Cottrell, who is at Arsenal's training ground for us. Gary, you're set to speak to Mikel Arteta later. Lots of reports in today's newspapers suggesting they may bring in a left-back this month. Is this an area that they really need to strengthen?
Yeah, sloppy was the word that Mikel Arteta used after that West Ham defeat. Sloppy in defence, he said, and wasteful up top. I'm sure we'll talk up top in a moment, but in terms of defence, after that West Ham game, concerns from Mikel Arteta, concerns from the fans. And then 4 days later, of course, another defeat, the second Premier League defeat in 4 days at Fulham, and things got worse because Zinchenko, who did actually look out of form in that West Ham game, didn't play very well at all, picked up an injury. We're told it's a calf injury, a slight calf problem is the way the club put it, and couldn't start at Craven Cottage. So in come Jacob Kiwior to take his role on the left-hand side. He didn't impress, to be fair. He's not, of course, a natural left-back. He's versatile, but it didn't really work on Sunday, so he was replaced at half-time by Tomiyasu. Again, a versatile player, did a better job, and, of course, Tomiyasu, just back from injury, is now gone to the Asia Cup. And so they are short, certainly in the left-back area, particularly if Zinchenko isn't fit yet. And, of course, it's the FA Cup at the weekend, and then potentially, if there's no FA Cup replay, a bit of a break for Zinchenko to get fit again and maybe have a bit of a rest and be ready to go again. They have got Jurrien Timber, of course, again, versatile, could do a job there, but it would be like a new signing when he comes back. The problem with that is we just don't know when he's going to be fit. It doesn't look like it's going to be this month now. It doesn't look like potentially it might even be next month. And, of course, that's going to be then, in that case, March before he's back. So they might need to do something in the meantime. Kieran Tierney, of course, is currently on loan at Real Sociedad. Would they take the option to bring him back if they can? Not sure whether they can or whether they would want to, but all considerations for Mikel Arteta and Edu.
So much discussion, Gary, for the need of a striker. How difficult would that be to achieve for Arsenal this month?
Well, it's a really, really difficult January, isn't it? Any January is difficult. And, of course, so many teams now want that player that can score them 20, 25, 30 goals a season. Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal, of course. But Arsenal haven't really got the funds to pay the kind of money that Brentford would be looking for to let Ivan Toney go. What's the figure being mentioned now? Around 100 million. And Nketiah just doesn't seem to be quite the finished product yet, does he? He's not scoring enough goals. Gabriel Jesus, for all that he brings, what a great player, and how much they love him here at Arsenal, what a job he does for Arsenal. But again, he's not a natural number 9, a natural 25, 30 goals a season, man. So, of course, they'd be desperate for a goal scorer. They'll be searching the internet, will Edu and the rest of the recruitment staff. I'm sure Mikel Arteta will be involved as well, keeping the IT boys busy. But the IT boys, I think, at the moment, given the asking price, will be ruling out IT Ivan Toney.
What about outgoings, Gary? Is there a chance we could see some players leaving the Emirates?
Well, a lot of players left, a lot of squad players who weren't really wanted by Mikel Arteta, who's had a massive clear-out, of course, since he arrived, left in the summer. 7 or 8 players left, either sold permanently or out on loan. So there may be the odd squad player who does go out if adding a player to some money for a potential deal was on the cards. So, for example, the aforementioned Eddie Nketiah, if they could find a striker, couldn't afford to pay the whole fee, perhaps he could go to help smooth that deal. But I don't think there'll be that many outs, really. I don't think, for example, Aaron Ramsdale will be leaving in January, despite the fact he's not playing regularly, unless, of course, he agitates to such an extent that the club have no option to let him go. But I think that's very, very unlikely indeed.
Gary, thank you very much. So Gary Cotterill speaking live at Arsenal's training ground there, saying he doesn't expect there to be many players leaving the club. In terms of incomings, Dave, what do you think top priority is for Mikel Arteta?
Well, not sure about incomings, but top priority is beating Liverpool this weekend in the FA Cup.
This is a transfer show.
I know. They just want to stop this mini slump. They just want to stop this mini slump, don't they, Arsenal? Because if they don't beat Liverpool, then the narrative will continue to ramp up a little bit that Arsenal are in need of a striker, particularly if they don't score at the weekend as well. Open play goals have been hard to come by. Gary mentioned it there, that they don't have a particularly natural number 9 when it comes to Gabriel Jesus, but
so Arsenal, need a striker, do you think?
Arsenal fans and the Arsenal as a club love Eddie Nketiah. He is better when he's starting games, I think, rather than coming off the bench. Maybe it's time to try and get him a little bit of rhythm and start him for Arsenal. But a strike, I personally don't think it's crisis time if Arsenal don't get a striker in this January transfer window. 5 points off the top. They're in a no-win in 3 games, but I don't think it's going to be a problem if they get to the end of this January window and they haven't brought in a striker, because I think there's answers within the squad. And yes, Saka, Martinelli, maybe they're not quite hitting that form at the moment, but it's not to say that one game can change everything for these players and they'll start hitting the back of the net sooner rather than later.
They were the 3rd biggest spenders last January. Do you think it's unlikely we'll see a repeat of that? Mainly because they're in a much better position now, aren't they, than they were last January?
Yeah, they did a lot of business in the summer, didn't they? They got their squad to a more complete place. And the players that are there as well, they'll have learnt a lot from last year. Yes, they have fallen away in the last 3 games, but I'd still expect them to be right up in the mix when the season's coming towards an end. So, like Dave says, I don't think there's a need for massive surgery within this squad. And it sounds boring, but we keep saying about the profit and sustainability rules. Arsenal did spend a lot of money in the summer, and also, look, you can see there, they spent £59 million last January. Maybe didn't get their first choice players last January, but then found the opportunities and got players with Premier League experience in Trossard and Jorginho. And I remember when they were battling for the title at that point and were neck and neck with Man City, those players came in and made important key contributions. It might be that they look at the low market at this stage, but I'm with Dave. I don't see that they can go and spend huge money on the striker that maybe some Arsenal fans crave. And I also agree with Dave that I do think there's answers within that squad.
OK, well, let's turn our attention from Arsenal to Newcastle now. Will they be busy in this window? 27 days to go. Well, this is what Eddie Howe had to say a little bit earlier.
The month of January will go quite quickly. Are you trying to sort of see the bigger picture rather than those sort of short-term fixes for players who are not available to you for injury?
Yes, we are. I think that's a good way of putting it. We will assess the month as it goes on. Of course, short term, there would be a need to bring players in with the dynamic of the squad currently. But we hope we can get players back towards the end of January that will make a difference.
Some talk in Brazil and France this morning about Bruno being linked with PSG. I know you can't go into it too much, but I guess when it gets to the end of the window, if you've still got him on board, that'll be exactly what you're looking for.
I think when you're talking about your best players, you want to keep them at the football club for as long as possible. So that's certainly our aim.
Well, due to FFP, potentially a difficult window for Newcastle. Dan, how busy do you think they'll be?
I'm not expecting anything major from Newcastle. I think it may be a case of waiting until a little bit later on in the window and seeing what crops up. I would expect them to maybe be looking at the goalkeeper situation. I think they've got Pope out until April, so he's going to be a big loss. Dubravka's done OK, but I don't think he's good enough to be the number one for the level that Newcastle are at. So they may look at a short-term signing in goal. And then there's that void as well where they've got Tonali missing for the entirety of the season. He was their marquee signing. In the summer, they've been linked with Calvin Phillips. Again, if they can get a sensible loan in like Calvin Phillips in the midfield area, I'd expect them to do that. But they have players returning. They've got players who've been out for a few months, the likes of Harvey Barnes, who was signed for big money in the summer. He's coming back this month. So it's almost like they needed a window a little bit earlier because they had so many players missing earlier on in the season and they obviously couldn't act. And now as those players are starting to come back, the transfer window's open. So I don't think there'll be anything major from them, but goalkeeper and central midfield I think would be two positions they'd look at if they got the chance.
Yeah, given that the players are returning, Dave, do you think they actually do need to strengthen, or it is not essential, especially now they're not in Europe anymore either?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a factor to think about. I remember asking Sean Dyche when Burnley had their takeover and they were expected to have an influx of money into the club and bring in some players, and I remember asking Sean Dyche about what it does within a club when you bring in a new player, and he talked about it's not just it gives everyone a lift within the training ground, but it's not just that. It's when players are on their way into training and they're in the car thinking, we've got this new guy in today, we need to up our game, we need to play a little bit better. And it's not just, within the training ground. A new signing can just give everybody a little bit of a lift within the club, whether it's staff, whether it's players. And I'm not saying that Newcastle need that little bit of a lift. I'm just thinking that maybe some of their players haven't hit the form that they had last year, and maybe it just needs a little bit of an extra kick. That's one of the reasons why you might want to try and bring in a player during this January transfer window. But if the money's not there to spend, it's not going to happen for Newcastle.
But Flex, credit to Eddie Howe. If you look at his signings, the majority of them have worked out, haven't they?
Really, really solid. Between summer and a couple of Januaries, they've been really, really good. I mean, Gordon, Isak, Kieran Trippier, Bruno Guimaraes, Dan Burn, Botman, Pope, Tonali, although I know he's been out for a long time, but you can see what sort of signing he's probably going to turn out to be for them. Harvey Barnes, big injury. He's coming back soon. Timo Livramento's done really well. Lewis Hall hasn't even really featured yet. Really exciting signings. Even Nick Pope coming in and making that position his own. And that is something that I think Newcastle deserve huge credit for, in that it's one thing getting new owners and moving on from Mike Ashley and getting a huge influx of funds and riches, and et cetera, but how do they move in the transfer window? Are they astute? Are they identifying the types of players that they need for this current mode, this current moment for Newcastle before they kick on to higher heights? And I think they've got that perfectly right by bringing in some players who have played in the Premier League before, by bringing in some older players, by bringing in some young, exciting players for the future, by bringing in some powerhouses as well. I mean, the coup of Isak is massive for Newcastle. Arsenal were looking at him, and we were talking off air about a striker of the quality of Alexander Isak. Who would he improve? Manchester United, Chelsea, could easily play for Liverpool, could easily play for Arsenal, probably just wouldn't get into City. That's a massive coup that they have. So that shows that they can attract the big uns, but they can also, the stardust, the big star quality where the rest of the top six is looking and saying, I'll tell you what, we'd have him. But they can also be a bit more astute and say, who can help us along our way? So I think they need to remember that it has worked and they need to keep calm, and I'm sure they will.
OK, well, we have some other transfer stories to update you on as well. Celtic and Rangers are both interested in signing Nottingham Forest defender Scott McKenna. He could move on an initial loan deal for the rest of his contract with a view to signing him on a free transfer in the summer. And Sheffield United have announced the signing of Ben Brereton Diaz on loan from Villarreal. Well, it is time for a short break now. But coming up, we'll have the very latest on Jadon Sancho's future as Borussia Dortmund look to sign him on loan.
The bigger
Welcome back to Transfer Talk. To Manchester United and the future of Jadon Sancho. Borussia Dortmund want him on loan and are hoping to have a deal in place soon. Well, let's get the latest from Sky Germany's Patrick Berger, who's at their training camp in Marbella.
Well, we had expected him today, but still no Jadon here, still no Jadon at the airport. There was a flight booked yesterday by Borussia Dortmund. It was on hold, an Embraer Phantom 300 private jet, but the flight is cancelled right now, and we are still waiting if he's coming. But to be honest, according to our information, we don't expect him today here at Marbella, perhaps tomorrow. In general, it seems that is a good deal for Borussia Dortmund. In total, it's a package of 3.5 million euro salary and loan fee in total. This is very good, but we don't expect, to be honest, a buy option for Borussia Dortmund in this contract. And this is a thing like, I don't know, a lot of fans and also we are discussing if this is, sensible for Borussia Dortmund or not.
So still no Jadon Sancho in Marbella, but we're hearing good progress is being made. Dan, how close do you think we are to done deal?
Yeah, from listening to Patrick, it sounds like this is nearly there now. It's kind of accelerated over the last few days. There was an initial reluctance from Dortmund to take the player back. They say, of course, never go back, and Dortmund seemed a bit reluctant to pull the trigger on this deal to begin with. But over time, I think they've probably realised this is actually a really good deal for us. We're getting a really good footballer. OK, it's someone that's going to have to come in and it's going to take him a while to get to match sharpness. But when he gets back to match sharpness, it's someone that's proven there in that league and proven in the Champions League for them as well. They've fallen away a little bit in the title race in recent weeks. They've got, I think, they're 15 points off Bayer Leverkusen now at the top of the table. So, as Dave said about some of the other deals, sometimes just bringing in someone new into the building, it reinvigorates the place, and I think it will give Dortmund a huge boost. I think from Manchester United's perspective as well, it's probably as good a deal as they could hope for at this stage, isn't it, Flex? Because everybody knows that there's been a complete relationship breakdown, and as long as Sancho and Ten Hag are there, Sancho isn't going to be playing for Manchester United. So from now on, they're almost hoping that Sancho can play his way back into form and so that he can retain his value and Manchester United can review their options in the summer.
But they say never go back. Well, meanwhile, Eric Ten Hag confirmed the club have exercised contract extensions for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Hannibal Mejbri and Victor Lindelof. But there still remain questions over Raphael Varane and Anthony Martial's futures. Flex, what did Ten Hag say about this yesterday? Yeah,
he was asked about the players that he has triggered the extensions for, which we know is Wan-Bissaka, Hannibal Mejbri and Victor Lindelof. And when it got to the situation of Anthony Martial and Raphael Varane, those haven't been triggered as of yet. And he said that the club are talking to them, and he was further pushed on that and said, why have you done the others and what's been said to Martial and Raphael Varane? And he said that's between the club and the players. And sometimes it can get a little bit misconstrued as to what he meant by that. I think some people took it as it means that Martial's going to get a new deal. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't suggest that. He's basically saying that as of now, it hasn't been triggered, and there's conversations to be had around that. With Raphael Varane, I think the situation is very different as well because of the amount of wages he's on. So I think to quash that, Eric Ten Hag didn't say that Anthony Martial's going to be renewed, and he didn't say that Raphael Varane is going to be renewed either.
Well, to get a better idea of the contract situations at United, Flex, you've been taking a closer look at what United have done in the past when contracts have come to an end. Yes, exactly that, because it's not something that is uncommon for Manchester United to do. And in my opinion, I think what we're seeing from Manchester United is that they're trying to get a hold of these big contracts, players on big wages, and how difficult it may be to shift players on or move players on or even bring other players in if this is not taken care of. I'm going to start with these three here on the screen: Hannibal Mejbri, Victor Lindelof and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Those have all been triggered. Mejbri's been at the club since 2019, Victor Lindelof coming in 2017, and Wan-Bissaka coming in 2019. And with that, it's all about Manchester United sort of retaining value, giving themselves some thinking time so that they can make better decisions going forward. If I cast your minds back now to December 2022, this was a similar theme that happened. We had Diogo Dalot, we had Fred,
we also had Marcus Rashford and Luke Shaw in very similar situations to Hannibal Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka, where all of these contracts were triggered as extensions. Subsequently, moving forward, it was Diogo Dalot who was given a brand new deal at Manchester United, 5 years with an extension on top of that for a further year. Marcus Rashford, we all know about his massive new contract to keep him at Manchester United until 2028. And Luke Shaw signed a similar contract which keeps him at the club until 2027. But it's actually Fred who was the difference out of all of them in terms of he got triggered his extension, but he was then sold for 12.9 million to Fenerbahce. So what we're seeing here is Manchester United exercising what they usually do and giving themselves some calm, which brings us to Martial and Varane in this situation. There is a situation where Raphael Varane could stay at Manchester United, vastly experienced defender, and when he plays, as we've spoken about on shows previous, Manchester United are a much better team. However, he's on astronomical wages, which are difficult to justify. And if Manchester United want him to stay, it can't be on the same terms that he is, pretty much, which reported £340,000 a week. He has injury problems. He's in and out of the side, but his experience is vast. Put that to Anthony Martial. Huge outlay, over £200,000 a week. He's coming to the end of his current new deal and could talk to clubs that will potentially go for free. So, in my opinion, I think if Manchester United wanted to keep Anthony Martial, I think we would have seen that extension sort of triggered now. But the fact that they're not means they're giving themselves thinking time and looking to sort of reevaluate the squad and avoid past mistakes. I go back to Paul Pogba. He had an extension triggered for him, and then in the end, bad planning, he leaves for free again. The same with Jesse Lingard, and also the same with David De Gea, who wasn't triggered. They gave themselves thinking time, got to the end of the window and said, OK, we're not going to renew. So my point is, guys, is that we've seen Manchester United do this an awful lot, and it seems to me like they're trying to get a hold of these contracts, these big wages, and kick the team forward and kick the squad forward and change the systems at Manchester United and avoid the sins of the past.
I think that's a really good piece, because sometimes supporters at home will look at everybody and lump them all into the same category and go, we're extending him, when actually the clubs are looking at each player on an individual basis, where they sit in the wage structure, their age of the player, what they can give to the team, and making a considered decision on that. It's not just, why are we extending them. There's actually a lot of thought process that goes in behind it. Sometimes it goes right, and as you pointed out, sometimes it doesn't go right, but it's not all a case of, well, let's just trigger, and then we make a decision.
Learn from your mistakes. Key lesson here.
Key lessons. You have to learn from the mistakes.
Flex's life lessons.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, it's talk about sort of the definition of insanity, etc., etc. And if Sir Jim Ratcliffe's going to come into Manchester United with Ineos and change them, we need to look away from the pitch for a second. Need to look away from the manager for a second. Look at the structure of the football club. Look at the past decisions that have been made that Manchester United have had to pay the consequence for time and time again with making wrong decisions. So an element of calm here and strategic thinking, player by player, to offload players on big contracts, to offload players who may not be part of the long-term future at Manchester United, is absolutely what needs to happen. If Raphael Varane gets a contract triggered at £340,000 a week and is in and out of the squad next year, a lot of Man United fans are going to say, we've made the same mistake again. He's on huge wages. You're looking at Casemiro, he's got about 3 years left on his deal, astronomical wages. So Manchester United need to change that in order to move forward.
Right, some breaking news coming into us now. Sky Germany are reporting that Bayern Munich remain interested in signing Tottenham defender Eric Dier. The England international was on their list of potential new centre-backs in the summer, and he has remained on that list leading into January. Discussions internally at Bayern are around the idea of a permanent deal, but they have other options they're exploring as well. Dier can speak to clubs outside England this month, with his Tottenham contract expiring in the summer. We know Bayern boss Thomas Tuchel wants new signings as soon as possible, and Eric Dier is good friends with Harry Kane, who of course joined Bayern Munich in the summer. How likely do you think this move is?
I think potentially now could be completely wide of the mark here, but Bayern are pretty well set at centre-back. I know they were looking at João Paulinho as kind of that figurehead in midfield in the summer. I know Eric Dier hasn't played there for a few years, But I wonder if they're looking at him to be kind of a multifunctional player who can fill in at centre-back but also be a physical presence in defensive midfield, because I do think they're pretty well set for numbers at centre-back, but we know they were looking for a physical presence in that midfield in the summer.
And it does seem that Eric Dier is surplus to requirement at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Maybe Ange doesn't see him as a starter, does he?
No, I mean, he's had opportunities to play given the injury list at Tottenham, and he's preferred Emerson Royale to play at centre-back. So it was kind of the writings being on the wall for Eric Dier at Tottenham. A lot of top managers rate him, and, you know, that's because he's a very good player. Now, at the moment, it seems that he's not part of Ange Postecoglou's plans, but that doesn't mean to say he can go on and have a great career, maybe get back into the England squad by moving abroad. You know, he's used to a European lifestyle, he knows lots of different languages, so why wouldn't he be able to go and fit in at Bayern Munich?
Flex, what do you think? Bayern Munich, Eric Dier, you see it?
I think if Eric Dier ended up at Bayern Munich, I think he would turn around to Tottenham and say, have that, you know, ends up in the Champions League, ends up with Harry Kane, with fantastic players, and that's no play on Spurs, because I think if you're a Spurs fan, you're looking at it saying Eric Dier clearly doesn't fit into what we want to do. We want to move away from players like that. So it wouldn't be any love loss. I'm just talking about a personal for Eric Dier. He would have thought he would have landed on his feet. But it will be sort of interchangeable. You're right. You know, you look at Upamecano, he's doing really well. Kim Min-jae is probably going to be going off to the Asia Cup. Which there's probably a little bit of a space there. And I know they have had injuries at centre-half as well, De Ligt as well. So I do think there's a situation where he could end up there. But he just needs to go and play football. You know, it's a sad situation when you see a player who was an integral part of a club and then all of a sudden they've just been waiting in wings. We've only just seen Hugo Lloris make a move to LAFC. So definitely for Dier, he would want to get a move and reignite his career.
OK, time for a quick break. But next on Transfer Talk, we will have the latest from Manchester City. We'll also have an update on the future of Ivan Toney. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Let's get to Manchester City now. They're preparing to face Huddersfield in the FA Cup tomorrow. Waiting to speak to us is our reporter Anton Tolui, who'll be speaking to Pep Guardiola later. Good afternoon, Anton. What's the latest?
Possible. So, like I said, everybody's fairly relaxed, but there will probably be a resolution between now and the end of the window.
Anton, Manchester City are close to getting one deal done. Doesn't look like we're going to be seeing him for a while, though. Tell us what the latest is with Claudio Echeverri.
Yeah, we're inching ever closer to the exciting young Argentinian eventually joining Manchester City, certainly signing on the dotted line. Anyway, 18 years of age, a lot of hype around this attacking talent. Basically, look, the fee's been agreed with River Plate, a fee of around €40 million, plus a lot of incentives, a lot of bonuses over the years. It's also been agreed he'll spend the next sort of 12 months still on loan in Argentina. Personal terms have all been agreed. It's just a case of ratification, work permits, international transfer. All those kind of things probably need to still take place or get signed off, and then he will formally be a Manchester City player. This is a player, like I said, with a lot of hype, been watched by pretty much every single major European club. You don't have to go and watch his tape at the Under-17 World Cup, where he was played lights out, scoring 5 goals and scoring a hat-trick against Brazil. And you go and watch those goals and you see the technical ability he has at such a young age. That is why so many people in the world game are excited about this teenager. That is why Manchester City came in early. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to when Manchester City signed Julian Alvarez on a kind of similar deal. I think the difference is here, Alvarez was a lot further along his development, was a lot more established as a starter, won Copa Libertadores, for example, with River Plate, whereas Echeverri's still very young, still developing, so don't necessarily expect him to bang straight in the first game when he arrives here in 12 months after the end of his loan spell. City will be watching him, developing him, but they're very excited about him.
Anton, what about potential outgoings at Manchester City? How is that seen there?
Well, look, I mean, they've had one confirmed over the last 24 hours. Zach Steffen has gone back to MLS, joining Colorado Rapids on a permanent deal. He obviously came in a few years ago as the backup, trying to compete with Edison. Their plan was to develop him and see if he could become a number one eventually. That hasn't quite worked out. He's had loan spells away, but when City signed Stefan Ortega 18 months ago, it seems that the writing was on the wall for Zach Steffen, and obviously he wants to go ahead and become USA's number one again. He's lost that place to Nottingham Forest's Matt Turner, so it's going to be interesting to see whether he can get back there. Home World Cup for the United States coming up in a couple of years as well, so that probably explains that move. Don't expect much other business to be players leaving, certainly senior players leaving Manchester City in this window. They're fighting on 3 fronts, including, like I said, the start of their FA Cup defence Sunday against Huddersfield. So, yeah, don't expect too many senior players. They want to keep this squad together. They want to keep competing for as many competitions as they can. You know what City are like.
Looking forward to hearing from Pep Guardiola shortly. Thank you, Anton. Well, let's just talk about Calvin Phillips again. If he wants to be on that plane to Germany this summer, Dan, is it essential that he goes to a club where he's going to get some game time, play some more minutes?
I think whatever happens, as long as he's not injured, Calvin Phillips will be on that plane. Gareth Southgate showed in the World Cup that he rates Phillips, and he gave him an awful lot of leeway to get in that squad. He picked up a bad injury just before the tournament, but it felt like Southgate was always going to take him, even if he wasn't fit for the start of that tournament. It wasn't that long ago, 2021, in fact, that Calvin Phillips was England's Player of the Year after a really, really strong Euros. So I think whatever happens, he's in the squad. But I actually think he needs to get a move if he wants to be in that starting 11. And I think if he does get a move and he does get minutes, I think in Gareth Southgate's eyes, he would be in England's first 11. I think it would be him, Rice and Bellingham in the central midfield area. So he'd be in the squad regardless. But if he wants to get in that team and prove himself to Southgate, he needs a move.
Dave, City signed him for £42 million. Quite a lot of money. Why do you think it didn't work out?
Well, I think his first hurdle is that Rodri's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world, and he's got to try and get in ahead of him. Now, when he signed, I think he was quite positive about the fact that not only could he play instead of him, but I think he could play alongside him. he's done everything he can at Manchester City in order to try and get into the team. Pep Guardiola has praised him for the way he's trained, his attitude. Antoine pointed out there that he's a very popular member of the dressing room as well. But the fact is, he's just not got minutes. And then he's had COVID, I think, when he first signed. He's had injury. And he's not played enough games. And Pep Guardiola, I guess you could say he's not really given him the opportunity to get into a rhythm. But I think on the other side of the coin...
Is he maybe just not a Pep Guardiola kind of player?
Exactly. He's not performing the way that Pep Guardiola wants. And he has tried everything. I think he went on the record and gave an interview to say... He rang up Marcelo Bielsa, his former manager, to say, what do I need to do? And we obviously know the connection between Bielsa and Pep Guardiola. So he's done everything he can. He even had an opportunity to leave in the summer. And he said, no, I want to try and stay and have another go at it. It's got to the point now where it is the end of the road. And it's time to move on, I think.
OK, to Brentford now. And Thomas Frank says it will take an unbelievable offer if they were to sell Ivan Toney this window, with the head coach insisting he expects the forward to stay with the club in January. Toney was once again a topic of conversation at Frank's press conference, much to his amusement.
Yes, he's a Brentford player. He's here. Clearly, we miss a few offensive players. I can't see why we should sell him. And I would love to have him here for a longer time.
But even if an offer, say, comes in from an Arsenal or Chelsea or whatever, you're convinced he will be here for them?
It's not me to discuss that, but that needs to be... If I ever could recommend that, and it's not me to say yes or no, that's Phil or Matthew, it needs to be an unbelievable price. So he will stay here.
What's unbelievable, just out of interest?
You have a good imagination, so...
The clock is ticking. It is time for a quick break. But next we will hear from Jurgen Klopp on potential outgoings. And we'll have an update on Tottenham's search for a new defender. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. To recap the breaking news from earlier this morning, Thilo Kehrer has completed a loan move from West Ham to Monaco. Monaco will pay an initial £431,000 for the loan, and the deal contains a £9.5 million option to make it permanent. OK, let's get back to Tottenham then, and we can recap the news we brought you just now. Sky Germany are reporting that Bayern Munich remain interested in signing Eric Dier. Dier can speak to clubs outside England this month, with his Tottenham contract expiring in the summer. Now, we know that Tottenham are after a defender, with Eric Dier potentially
really struggling at Spurs. To be able to make an impact in this new look Spurs would really be a hindrance to Eric Dier. It's not going to feel good for him. So he needs to reignite his career. He does need to get out of there. But I don't think a lot of people would have thought it would have been Bayern Munich. So I think this one's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. And I think one of the reasons why he's fallen down that pecking order is that, when they had the likes of Jose and Conte, a back five, a lot of protection, playing with three central defenders a lot of the time. Eric Dier is protected, so he can go and do what he does best: be commanding on the ball, win his headers, decent distribution. I think as the evolution of Spurs has come, playing on the front foot, playing a high line, I think the weaknesses in his game sort of came to the forefront, and it's definitely not something that Ange Postecoglou clearly wants to invest in. So, it'd be good for him to move.
And do you think the way things are at the moment, with him not playing, if he was to stay at Tottenham, then he wouldn't be on that plane to Germany in the summer?
Maybe that would come a little bit too soon for him, but if he gets game time between now and the end of the season and into next year, I don't see why he wouldn't force his way back into England's plans, whoever the manager might be at that point. Gareth Southgate has picked him in the past, so why couldn't he force his way back into the England squad? I think, Flex is right. If he goes to a place like Bayern Munich, he won't have to do so much of the kind of defending that he would need to do in a Tottenham team right now. So he'd be playing for a team at the top of the division, ball dominant side, and he would be able to show his skills on the ball, which is what he's absolutely fantastic at. So for Eric Dier, I think it would be a great move.
Do you not think the biggest thing for him to make this move would be he's been part of some really good Spurs sides like Harry Kane, hasn't got any medals to show for it. Even if it's just a short-term move to Bayern Munich, you've got a chance to win something then and put some medals in your trophy cabinet. So I think that would probably be one of the main motivators.
Yeah, 100%.
So Eric Dier potentially on his way out of Tottenham. One player they are looking at is Radu Dragusin, but there could be some complications with this move. What's the latest date?
Yeah, so Napoli are pushing to sign Radu Dragusin from Genoa. Tottenham have been in talks for the last couple of weeks with the Italian side over the 21-year-old defender. There was a small gap in valuation, but the expectation was that Tottenham and Genoa were going to come to an agreement. I think Genoa want around about 30 million euros for the player, so 27 million pounds. Now, Napoli have come in this week and they're potentially offering players as part of that deal with Leo Ostergaard. Coventry and Stoke fans will remember him. And if he is then part of this deal, then it gives Genoa something to think about because they get a ready-made replacement. Dragusin has played in a back three, plays left centre-back, but he's covered in the middle of the three, and he's played at the right side of the three as well. So for Genoa, they have to weigh up, OK, we're losing a player, but are we going to get one from Napoli in the meantime? But at 21 years old, Tottenham were hoping to get this deal done early. It's a player that is able to improve as the years go on, and they were getting a player that they were able to mould in the style and the identity of Ange Postecoglou. So if that doesn't happen, it would be disappointing. So they have got a bit of competition, but it's by no means dead in the water just yet. There's still a chance for Tottenham.
Tottenham have recalled Jed Spence from his loan at Leeds as well. The defender made 7 appearances for the Championship side, having joined them on loan in August. Flex, do you think they'll keep him, or can you see him going back out on loan again?
No, I could probably see him going back out on loan again if it's possible. I mean, the Jed Spence situation, I think, is quite sad in terms of where he was, at Middlesbrough, doing fantastically well, helped Forest get promoted. Then he gets that big move to Spurs. He came with a lot of anticipation, a lot of expectation, a really good young prospect, good in the under-21s as well, a really, really good right-back, great set of lungs on him, gets up and down, really aggressive, good with his feet, and looked really exciting. So I think the fact that he's had spells at Rennes, he's played 8 times for them in Liga. You thought maybe that he could find a home there and reignite his career. That didn't quite happen. He's gone on loan to Leeds now, not quite happened. And at the back end of last year, or when it was sort of coming down quite rapidly with Spurs last year, a lot of fans were saying, even under Joseph, give him a game, just let him play. He can't be worse than what we're seeing. And they didn't get to see that. So I think the best thing for him, unless Ange Postecoglou's got different ideas, by the way. I mean, if he could displace Pedro Porro, I'll be surprised, but that'll be fantastic for him. But I think the best thing for him would be to get a loan again.
OK, some more breaking news for you now. And Eintracht Frankfurt have reached a verbal agreement with Wolves on a 6-month loan deal for Sasha Kalajdzic. He'll be involved tonight in Wolves' FA Cup game at Brentford. So completion of the transfer is not imminent. But Eintracht have an initial agreement with Wolves to take him for the rest of the campaign. OK, to Liverpool now, top of the Premier League. But do they need to add to their squad this month? Flex, can the current squad win the Premier League, or is it essential they strengthen?
It does feel like the initial feeling was that they're a little bit short. As sort of at the beginning of the season, we spoke previously earlier this morning, about what a great job Klopp's done with the rebuild, especially at the heart of midfield. But the more you're seeing this Liverpool team, and they're at the top of the league as it stands, and they're scoring a lot of goals and they look really aggressive, they're on the front foot, you have to say they can fight for it. I believe they can fight for it. I think they're showing they can fight for it. They've still got players like, I know Mo Salah's going off to AFCON, but they've still got Mo Salah. They've got Virgil van Dijk. You know, these are big players. They've got Alisson. They've been there and done it. The big uns.
They got the big uns.
They've been there and done it before. So that can be infectious amongst other players who maybe haven't. Trent as well, very experienced player, fantastic player, generational talent, and he's playing out of his skin at the minute as well. So they've definitely got the tools to do it. Would they fall a little bit short? Maybe, but I think it depends how they come out of this period without Mo Salah. If they're still intact and touching distance of the top of the league, if not still the top of the league, you cannot write Liverpool off from fighting for that title. Absolutely not.
Well, Jurgen Klopp was asked about the January transfer window this morning. This is what he had to say.
With Ned, we have to see. We have to consider our own situation and stuff like this. He will definitely be with us until the end of the month, and we will have talks and see our situation. That's how it is. Not sure they would say it didn't work out 100% at Celtic. A little bit of injuries, but then if a team like Celtic is in a positive moment and you are in the team, then you stay in the team. If you have not a positive moment and you are in the team, then you might go out. So that says nothing about the quality. So Ned will train with us, and then we will see how that develops. With Reece, it's slightly different. He will be first with the U23s. I will have to talk to him why his loan spell didn't work out. That was obviously different. And the boy I know, I would expect to play in Scotland 100% from the first until the last second. If it's not Celtic or Rangers, where it's always slightly different, and he didn't. So I will have to talk to him about that. Didn't do that yet, but that will happen definitely. And then we will see what's the outcome of that conversation.
Former Liverpool forward Roberto Firmino has been offered to several clubs this month. Firmino joined Saudi Pro League club Al Ahly on a 3-year deal in the summer after his Liverpool contract expired. I'm sure we all agree we'd like to see him back in the Premier League. Where would you like to see him? Name the club.
Said it earlier, he got 11 goals and 4 assists last season without starting too many games. I'd love him at Villa as an
Get
alternative.
Bobby to Villa.
Get him to Villa, yeah.
Hashtag.
Dave's in full agreement with me as well.
Quick, Dave,
Don't do that to me.
club.
Wolves, so they need a striker.
Flex club.
Not Manchester United. That can't work. So
Not Manchester United. There we go. Chelsea. That is all we have time for. Good Morning Transfers is back, though, at the same time on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. Plus, Transfer Talk returns Monday at midday. And for a full roundup of all the day's news, you can catch the Transfer Show tonight at 5 and 7 o'clock. Total Football is next. There's a host of managers on the way. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Mikel Arteta and Eddie Howe to look forward to.